Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It is the 22nd of July 2014. Myself, Louise Collins, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson are here in a very, very hot studio in Plymouth. Any more to say?
No, only that we can report it's generally sunny across the UK, so that's good. It's a good job. There is some good news, even if it's the weather, because the rest of the stuff in UK is absolutely dire. So obvious. I think that we've got a country governed by criminals and idiots. And of course, we're now starting to see those policies, idiotic policies, coming to the fore. But you've been following Mr. Milliband, who's been across the pond, maybe to visit his brother, working for a very big charity, earning a lot of money.
Possibly there as well for that reason. This is really a non-story. It was more of a photo opportunity for Mr. Milliband. So the Zionist Milliband went to the White House to discuss the Ukraine, Gaza and the future of the EU. He took along some buddies to support him, those being Danny Alexandra, who is the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Lord Wood, who's one of his personal advisors, and his Chief of Staff, Tim Livesey. Asked why he was going to America, Mr. Milliband said because he wants to become Prime Minister in 10 months and the public like Prime Ministers with close friends to the US. And really that's all that story really had to say.
So look at the hand. The hand being offered is fascinating, isn't it? Obama, well, whoever he is, putting his hand across the table. And Ed Milliband looks as though he's sort of who is this?
I don't know.
Who
it's
is
just
this?
all
it's
the
bizarre.
stories is a total photo opportunity, propaganda.
I'm not a great one for picking up on the sort of white males in suits, because I think there's been a lot of damage done to this country by war of the sexes. But that picture gives me the creeps at white men in suits. Presumably that's the British team. Obama, of course, can claim to be different, but the British team there, who are these people and how did they get into power? Don't forget, of course, Milliband, a Marxist, but Beaky was able to listen into a bit of the real conversation.
Indeed he was. So there they were having a nice little chat. And he says, if I'm seen talking to you, it will help me become Prime Minister. And all Barry there could say is, sorry, who are you? But that's really, there was no story. It was just a bit of a photo opportunity for Milliband to be photographed with Obama.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, King David, well, what's he been doing? He's decided to elevate a lot of people that he's kicked out of positions of power. We'll come on to that in a minute, but presumably it's to keep them quiet. So in the report from the Evening Standard, 2 Conservative MPs in line to be made Knights Commander of the Order of St Michael and St George, something out of Noddy. They're Alan Duncan, who left his post as International Development Minister, Hugh Robertson, Foreign Office Minister, former Olympics Minister, Oliver Heald, who was Solicitor General until Monday. Coloured male and pale ministers. Well, you should vote Labour and you'll get more of them. I've got some
interesting facts about him, actually.
And Kenneth Clarke, veteran Minister Kenneth Clarke. He's been chosen for one of the highest honours in the gift of the Queen, which is to become a Companion of Honour. Well, lots of honour around Kenneth Clarke, of course, but reported in a variety of different ways. And we've got this one. So here we are.
Yeah, Oliver Head, he's, as you said, he's up for a knighthood. If you continue on through them, I've got some interesting facts about one of them in a minute. Ken Clarke, we all know. OK, so Alan Duncan, he actually claimed £5,000 on for gardening in the expenses scandal. And apparently he also famously said, whilst being secretly recorded, that MPs earning £64,000 were having to live on rations and are treated like something that I can't say
on UK Column News.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, these are the people, I was going to say have been in power, but of course they are still in power because they'll be doing their dirty deeds in the back rooms. And, is it any wonder why the country's in such a state? No, I don't think
Somebody did have a bit of a whine about it. Sarah Champion, she lashed out at Cameron after the reshuffle and the sacking of the ministers, saying that he was totally abusing the honours system. So that was Sarah Champion, which we'll have more on her tomorrow.
I don't think he's abusing the honours system, because I think that's what the honours system is there for, is rewarding the old boys who keep their mouths shut when they realise that they're working in a criminal system, which is Westminster. And on that note, we better bring in Mr. Tony Blair, your favourite.
The number one criminal, yep. So £250,000 a year for every speaking event. For his consultancy work, millions of pounds he receives. But Blair assures people he isn't. He's not in it for the money. Blair, whose property alone is worth £30 million minimum, has spoken out saying that in fact he is worth less than 20 million. And he said, in respect to my new life, first of all, I have to say that reports of my wealth are greatly exaggerated. Just for the record, I read I'm supposed to be worth 100 million. Sherry's kind of asking where it is. I'm not worth that. Half of that, a third of that, a quarter of that, a fifth of that. I could go on. And he said he spends 2/3 of his time on his unpaid role as a Middle East peace envoy and his charitable foundations which focus on Africa and faith issues. And I also employ over 200 people, he added. But just a little note, yesterday a Channel 4 news reporter approached Blair and asked him why he isn't over in Gaza, as he is the Middle East peace ambassador, and helping to end the current crisis, and apparently he declined to answer that question.
Well, I'd guess he wasn't there because he's not been paid for it.
Possibly, or he's loving every minute of it.
Brilliant people. So, of course, since Tony Blair has been in charge of peace in the Middle East, the violence has steadily increased. Are we surprised? Not at all. And many people working on more violence in Eastern Europe. Mike?
Yes, because Philip Hammond is over in Brussels today for the Foreign Affairs Council of the EU. Of course, he's the new Foreign Secretary. And the topic for the meeting, as you would expect, is the Ukraine and the crashed airliner in the Ukraine. According to him, the world has changed since the European Council last week. We have to send a clear signal to Russia. He didn't actually say to Russia. That was what he was talking about, though, from our meeting today, that we recognise that and that we're going to go further as a consequence of what has happened. And then he was asked about the possibility of an arms embargo, and he replied, it's one of the things we have to look at. So they are looking at an arms embargo. Okay, well, let's just see. So on the left, we have a Russian Sukhoi jet, which can do all sorts of things very famously. And on the right, we have the height of Western military aviation, which doesn't even fly. So I think Russia is quite capable of getting along quite nicely without having to worry too much about an arms embargo from the European Union. But right on cue, of course, as you would expect, Theresa May has announced that this morning that there'll be an inquiry into the Litvinenko murder. Well, there's not really much to be said about this, is there? Because the outcome of that inquiry is clearly already known.
Well, I've got something to say about it, Mike. Can you remember how long ago that little incident took place? About 3 years, something like that?
No, it was 2006 was when
2006.
Yes.
Well, so this was clearly an important item on the government agenda, not until trouble started in the Ukraine, and now's the time to get it up. And of course, it's ideal time to help try and blur public interest in the paedophile rings in Westminster. So this is what, propaganda and diversionary tactics, we think?
Well, absolutely. And if we look at the BBC's propaganda, this is typical of it. So we have a phone in today, a public phone in on BBC 5 Live, and what a loaded question. What would you do about President Putin, is what they're saying. So the implication, absolutely from the start, is that something needs to be done about President Putin. I thought the BBC was supposed to have some particular values, Brian, which included some kind of balance and sort of honesty and objectivity and so on.
Well, of course, we had our BBC speaker yesterday, Devon, and what the gentleman was explaining was that despite the BBC claiming to have all of these upstanding values of independence and honesty and high standards of reporting, when it came to the crunch inside the BBC, this wasn't true. What was coming out really was what we know, but it's nice to see more evidence for it, is that the BBC is a propaganda machine that simply, changes its coat when it wants to.
Right.
But
so
we are, sorry if I'm just finished there, we are delighted to say that we will be continuing our in-depth investigation into the BBC. And if anybody can just help us, we're not sure whether there was any BBC report on this tribunal, which which our guest talked about yesterday. We have seen a report in the Daily Mail, but it seems that the BBC has simply neglected to report a major challenge by one of its former employees into the fact that it doesn't live up to its high-low standards.
Right, so the key point here being that the BBC, a propaganda machine, which is why the sheer hypocrisy of this this disgraceful little video that the Telegraph is touting around it's just amazing. Biggest piece of media hypocrisy ever, I think. So we have Russia expert Keir Giles from Chatham House, no less, who I just suggest everybody go and watches this little video. He starts the video by commenting, "What you have here is a case in point of Russian information warfare." And if you haven't fallen off your chair by having heard that, he went on to say that this is one of the clearest demonstrations yet that the truth is the first casualty in these situations, and indeed it is. So do have a look at that video and perhaps let Mr. Giles know what you think. Of course, as we mentioned yesterday, the mainstream media now beginning to cover this BRICS agreement and the BRICS nations' intention to place themselves in competition with the IMF and the World Bank. So what's the mainstream talking about? Well, the Financial Times here, well, what are they saying? We'll just quote a little bit from this. "If the BRICS truly do want to supplant the IMF, it will be a dramatic move. History and political reality, however, suggest that they will lose their nerve and it will end up as a complement rather than a substitute. Well, time will tell. And of course, perhaps the intended war with Russia and China will sort that problem out." But also in the FT yesterday is this opinion piece from Akshay Mathur, which addresses the comment in the chat box yesterday from Ken, I think it was, questioning the fact that this new BRICS agreement is going to be still using US dollars. And just to quote a little bit from this, he says, but the bank's establishment also enhances another key geoeconomic ambition of the BRICS to conduct more trade in local currencies, thereby diluting the dominance of the US dollar. Already, there's plenty of evidence to underscore the vitality of this ambition. Russia is denominating its energy assets in rubles. China is pushing the renminbi to become the global currency for trade payments, and India is creatively using rupee accounts to hold payments for Iran after the US and the EU imposed financial sanctions on Iran. So can the mandate of the new bank be extended to incubate a non-dollar financial architecture for emerging countries? If so, what would the design look like? And he goes on to describe what that might look like. And again, I suggest you have a read at that. But as well, Liam Halligan, of course, coming out strongly for Glass-Steagall in the past. He's also highlighting the implications for the dollar of the BRICS agreement. And Halligan points out that actually today, the 22nd, is the 70th anniversary of the Bretton Woods Conference. And he says something just took place, though, which illustrates that dollar reserve currency status won't last forever and could be seriously diluted. Last week, 7 decades on from Bretton Woods, the governments of Brazil, Russia, India and China, conveniently forgetting South Africa, well, I did that myself at one point, so I'm not going to criticise him for that, led a conference in the Brazilian city of Fortaleza to mark the establishment of a new development bank. Whatever diplomatic niceties are put on it, it is intent on competing with the IMF and the World Bank. Now, again, have a read at this article. It's quite long, but of course, if we think about Bretton Woods, this is the anniversary of it. Just about everything that was agreed at the Bretton Woods conference was subsequently subverted, the IMF being a case in point, but also the attempts to shut down the Bank for International Settlements. There was a serious attempt to shut down the Bank for International Settlements for war crimes, but the Bank of England and the British government managed to stop that, basically because Roosevelt died. And so the notion, and also from Bretton Woods, was the notion of fixed exchange rates. And of course, if there was such a thing, it would have made in the subsequent years the IMF's options for the pillage of third world countries much more limited. So the BRICS infrastructure is going to probably need, it is going to need fixed exchange rates, particularly if they're going to start trading in local currencies. And if it's to end up not being just another IMF. As we've already said, time will tell, and hopefully they will have some success at that. When you're ready.
Okay, we're ready. Right, okay, well, let's get back into life in UK, which is pretty appalling at the moment. And we come straight on to Melanie Shaw, the Beechwood House child abuse victim who's currently on remand in prison. Now, I'd like to say a very big thank you on Melanie's behalf to all of you who've written to her. Yeah. We understand that she's received well over 50 letters so far, but we're going to say to people, please, if you haven't written, can you write to her? There's two things at stake here. It's not only writing to Melanie in a personal capacity to reassure her that she's not been forgotten, but of course your letters coming into the prison show the authorities that the public is watching what's happening in this case. Yeah. And this has been very powerful in Robert Green's case with Holly Gregg. So if you haven't written, please do so. Do not send money with no name, as this is simply taken and donated to a charity of the prison's choice. Melanie in general says she is okay for money, but she does appreciate stamps. So if you write into her, you can include stamps in your letter. Interestingly enough, Melanie's been denied medication, we understand, in the Sodexo-run prison. And this has been pointed out to us, and we understand that this is a common occurrence, certainly with other women prisoners. We know that in other prisons across the country, the prison service thinks they can save money, well, a private company in this case, by denying prisoners access to NHS medications to which they'd normally be entitled to.
What I think, what it appears to be, is those people who are currently of sound mind and everything, and are currently on no psychotropic drugs or anything else, or any kind of medications, they forcibly give those people. But the people who have been prescribed it to calm them down, and they need their daily medication, are then prevented from having it. Obviously, to have this effects that you're pointing out here.
Well, this is all. This is turning common sense on its head. And what do you achieve? Breakdown. I just mentioned there that she's been moved several times. Sorry, Mike. So since she's been in Peterborough prison, she's been moved several times. She thinks this is to disorientate her, and of course it prevents her building bonds with other prisoners. And just a reminder, of course, this lady will appear in court on Friday. We're still waiting to find the time of that hearing, if anybody can help us on that. But we'd be grateful for anybody who can attend to see justice being done. Mike?
So yesterday we were talking about Brian Pede, right? And
Indeed,
he's been moved from prison to prison in order to prevent him making any bonds with prisoners and discussing his issues. And here, although we don't have Melanie being moved to other prisons, she's certainly being moved from wing to wing for the same reason. So this seems to be a bit of a pattern, potentially.
Yes, and you can say it's either an amazing coincidence, or what we're actually seeing is deliberate tactics by the authority to cause this poor lady further problems. So let's get into the background of this case, which is massive child abuse in the Nottingham area, not only centred on Beechwood Children's Home, where over 100 victims have come forward, but in several other homes which the police, Nottingham Police, are supposedly investigating under Operation Daybreak. Many would challenge that statement, and will be coming up with yet another victim who's come into the public domain to try and get the truth out. But thank you for the viewer who sent this through to us, an article from Community Care. This is dated May the 1st, 2003, and it says Nottingham councillors denied it was ordered by the National Care Standards Commission to close a children's home where a girl was later found hanged. The Commission said it advised the authority in April 2002 to close Beechwood Home after its inspectors found managers were not in control. So once again, we've got some fairly straightforward facts here. So we've got the National Care Standards Commission saying they told them to close the home, and we've got Nottingham saying, well, we don't know. Just follow the report through. So it was a verdict of accidental death on the sad death of this 15-year-old. She was a victim of bullying at the home, died 5 months after the Commission claims to have made its recommendation, and of course the council denies any such suggestion was made. Is this how we do business in this country now? We make suggestions. We don't put our reports in writing, and those reports are kept so that we know what's going on. But here we've got other factual evidence of a young girl dying as a result of bullying at Beechwood, and the report is that the home was out of control, going back to that report. So here's the Nottingham Post. Ofsted tells Nottingham's Child Safeguarding Board it must approve. And what's the date on this? May the 14th, 2014. And Ofsted had conducted a 3-week inspection of the department in March, and it says it requires improvement, but the authority says that the areas it was found not to be up to scratch do not have a direct implication on the safety of children. How can they possibly know that when the investigation into the abuse of over 100 children at Beechwood alone has not been completed? This is a complete lie. It's a smokescreen. And councillors like David Mellon, it's clear, are closing ranks with the local MPs, mainly Labour, but also including Conservatives, to make sure the truth of this wide-scale abuse doesn't come out. Now, we'd like to mention this gentleman, Michael Summers. We've spoken to him this morning. He's another victim of Beechwood Community House in Mapley. He has already gone public to say that he was abused there. Other youngsters were abused there. Vile sexual, physical assaults, psychological bullying, physical bullying. And he says he's not going to be silenced. They're not going to buy him off, which is what the council is trying to do with other victims by paying them £9,000. So here we've got yet more evidence coming forward of terrible abuse at this home.
Have we had any big names connected, within government or within councils linked to the care home?
Well, we have Louise, in as much as many people were told about this. Yeah. And the key bit is that the councils were repeatedly told about this abuse going on. Safeguarding organisations were told, and most importantly, Nottinghamshire police were told, and they did nothing. So ultimately, you can follow this through to the chief executives of the council, councillors, head of the police force, etc.
And Michael Summers, has he had any intimidation style tactics or tried to be framed for anything since speaking out? And where's he speaking out about it? He's reported in the local Post, but he's also on the internet, which I'm going to point people to. Cool. I've got another article here from the Lancashire Telegraph. Now, in the picture is a gentleman called Graham Holden, but he is praising Michael Summers. So in this report, you'll find it comes back to Michael Summers. And notice the language, claims. He's not claiming he was raped. He's saying he was raped, physically abused at a care home and a school in the city in the 1960s. And oh dear, Nottingham City Council and Nottingham County Council have both said they can't find the files relating to his time at Beechwood Community House, where he claims he reported the abuse of other children. He did report the abuse of other children, and he told me this morning that when he was moved from Beechwood to another location for his safety, he was raped in the car by one of the child protection individuals. Now, he moved to New York a little while ago. He's been talking to police in America about his abuse. Nottingham police claimed that they've been in dialogue with the American police, but the American police say no, they haven't. So every direction, Nottingham police seem to be lying or distorting the truth, or they've got very bad memories. And of course, if we come back to Melanie, why did Melanie Shaw contact us? Because she was very frightened of the police, having realised that they were not conducting their inquiries in a proper and professional manner. So here is part of the dialogue from Michael Summers. If you search for him in Google, you'll find a lot of information.
I wonder why Nottingham City Council say they are familiar with some of the names that I publicly outed as a sample of the paedophile ring at the core of their children's services during the 60s and 70s. Nottingham police say they have no trace of these individuals. And here are the key words. My allegations of corruption are really starting to take shape against Nottingham police. And when I'm done, I'm hoping it won't be Operation Daybreak. What he's really saying there, I think, is that all of the evidence that's coming into the UK column, all of the evidence and experience that these victims have says that Nottingham police are absolutely not doing their jobs. They are in the middle of a very big and very professional cover-up of these crimes. And I'm going to thank again people who've been researching and sending us information. But this is the sort of spider's web which shows all of the connections and interests around Nottingham Police. So Nottingham Police saying that they're working with all of these other councils and authorities, Ashfield, Gedling. They're working with Crime Stoppers, of course. They've also got a special collaborative unit with other East Midlands police forces. They're running a multi-agency intelligence team information support unit. That appears to be the sort of agency that will put information into MAPPA. And oh dear, Nottingham Police just happen to be part of Nottinghamshire Safeguarding Children Board. So essentially, Nottingham Police are investigating themselves. Well, of course, they're not bothering to do that. And the best bit is that they've also got a special arrangement with Nottingham City Council on communications and engagement.
Brian, this issue of independence, which we raised as a result of the ATFOD thing, just seems to get bigger and bigger because how can an organisation which is supposed to have investigatory powers actually ever be independent if it is working in cahoots with agencies that it should be investigating under certain circumstances? How can that possibly happen?
Because it can't be independent, Mike. And what we're actually seeing is every time the police are talking about working in collaboration with other authorities or working in partnership, what you're doing is stripping away their independence. But something much more frightening than that is the fact that as we investigate the Nottinghamshire case, we can now see that Nottinghamshire police are actually becoming one with the councils. This is not just about a little bit of hand-holding and ego stroking. We're now seeing collaboration, direct collaboration between the police and the local councils. So there is no independence. You can check all this yourself. Please do. So just go and have a look at Nottinghamshire Police website. And there's a whole list down this page of these other agencies they're working with. We can come in at this angle. Here's Inspector Andy Gann from Newark and Sherwood area. And what does he say here? Returning to Central Police Station, I became the partnership sergeant working with Nottingham City Council on various projects, including the introduction of police community support officers into the force, the development of a multi-agency anti-social behaviour team, and the rollout of safer neighbourhoods across the city. So if you've got a criminal allegation against Nottingham City Council, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be picking up the phone to their mates in the police and say, "Whoa, it's getting a bit hot here. Perhaps you could send an email to the UK column warning them off and asking them to take all the information off their site." Somebody would say they'd never do that, would they? But of course they have. And then have a look at this, because this is a copy of the collaboration agreement between a whole load of police forces: Derbyshire, Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Northamptonshire, are all getting together to link in to a so-called organisation, the East Midlands Special Operations Unit, with the aim of tackling serious and organised crime in the East Midlands region. What a shame that this wonderful organisation has absolutely failed to tackle the serious organised crime around child abuse. And if you haven't quite got the message with us today, have a look at this. It's a job description for the Communications and Engagement Supervisor to lead a small communications team whose primary focus is to improve, note the word, the integration between Nottinghamshire Police and Nottingham City Council. And can we ram this home a bit more? Well, here's point 4. To ensure all communications activity is aligned to the aims, vision and values of Nottinghamshire Police and Nottingham City Council, and that it aims to protect and enhance the reputation of each organisation. So here is Nottingham Police signing up to cover the backs of Nottingham City Council.
Shocking.
And people seem surprised that at the moment, although Nottinghamshire Constabulary say there is an investigation, Operation Daybreak, into widespread child abuse in the Nottinghamshire area, the victims are saying the police are simply not telling the truth. There is no full and proper investigation.
I mean, there are some good police officers, because I've been keeping an eye on the chat room. I mean, there are some good police officers, and we do need the police on our side. But unfortunately, there are some that have gone through the common purpose trained, a lot of the new ones coming in, when they are completely focused on the job at hand, forgetting that they're human beings and just doing as their masters tell them, whether without any regard for whether something's right or wrong. They're just going and following what they're being told to do.
Well, this is absolutely true. And I could say on a positive note, it's obvious to us that policemen and women have had enough of this cover-up of abuse and are coming forward. But what we are seeing in Nottingham, we're certainly seeing it with the Met Police, is that the cover-up is so deep and so broad, you can only come to the conclusion that senior police officers themselves are involved in the paedophilia, which is why they're so desperate to cover it up.
I mean, we know in particular some Met Police officers, and some are leaving because they just cannot handle being silenced any longer, and they've just had enough of the corruption and the paedophilia that's going on that they can't speak about because evidence is being hidden and put away.
Yeah.
Which is a shame that these good people are having to leave because they can't get their voice heard.
What are the MPs doing? And the answer to that is not a lot, but I'm delighted to say viewers have been busy. So this is part of it was either an email or a letter sent to Chris Leslie MP. He's looking very nice there, isn't he? Dear Mr Leslie, I've been made aware of the shocking story of Melanie Shaw by Brian Gerrish of UK Column, and one point which was emphasised this morning and on other occasions is that you have done nothing to help this poor lady. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but the stories surrounding Beechwood Children's Home need thorough investigation, as there are facts emerging that as the child abuse often is linked to powerful people, perhaps who work in high office, who are desperate to remain anonymous. The police are clearly trained to do as they're told. That's your point, of course, Louise. And actually protect the criminals and paedophiles. This is intolerable and totally unacceptable. And as a retired comprehensive school teacher, I'm well aware that all government employees who are paid by public money are servants and expected to do their jobs to the best of their ability. Please prove to me that you're doing just that, and I have to inform you that the usual story of not communicating with someone who's not living in the constituency of an MP is not applicable in this situation. Yes. Abuse of children is everyone's business, and I have to say that my own MP, Tim Farron, has contacted the Scottish Government over the way Robert Green has been treated. And yes, he's another whistleblower to expose the truth about the horrifying abuse of Holly Gregg. I'd like a reply within the next 5 working days. Thank you in anticipation. Now, my prediction, of course, is that this lady will get the usual fob-off letter. However, if this gentleman and other MPs were to be receiving a sack full of complaints from the public, and the public clearly angry at them failing to do their job, I think we'd start to get a different result.
I hope she does get a reply within the next 5 working days, because I spoke to my MP and it took me weeks. And did you play it out in the end, my letter that I wrote? The response
you've
we got
caught me
from
on that one. I'm afraid brain can't cope with it all, so I'm not sure.
But it took me weeks to get a reply for when I questioned her on what she was going to do about the institutional paedophile rings operating in Westminster, and it took weeks. And all it was just a pre-made out letter template that they could send off with wording with not really much information. But I hope she does get a response in 5 days. That'd be great.
The biggest problem we have is MPs simply saying, oh, it's outside our constituency, therefore we can't do anything about it. So what members of Parliament are saying at the moment is that any criminal activity taking place in Britain that they're informed of, they don't have a duty to do anything. So it'd be like saying that I'm here living in Devon, I'm aware of a team raiding banks in Lincoln, and not my responsibility, Gov, because I just live in Devon. This is crass, it's wrong. What these MPs are clearly doing is hiding and allowing criminal activity to take place. So it doesn't matter whether it's expenses or arms being shipped overseas illegally or the abuse of children, until we, the public, start to kick these people into action. That's a cuddly kick, of course. Case Atvod is listening.
Well, you could be classed a terrorist, Brian.
And cuddling has become a hate crime. We've got to actually boot these people in some form of action. Otherwise, they're going to continue to sit on their very fat backsides. Interesting little article here you had.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so The Guardian have been looking into definition of terrorism in the UK, and they've reported on David Anderson QC's latest review. Mr. Anderson, who is the official reviewer of counter-terrorism laws, has said that Britain had some of the most extensive anti-terrorism laws in the Western world. Mr. Anderson's latest report, which is going to be due for publication sometime today, is expected to show 3 examples of how current terror laws have been too widely drawn upon. So here's MI5 security services on what is terrorism: serious violence against a person, serious damage to a property, a threat to a person's life, a serious risk to health and safety of the public, or serious interference with or disruption of an electronic system. And international terrorism from groups such as Al-Qaeda presents a threat on a scale not previously encountered, drawing on extremist measures presented by figures such as Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda and its related networks. So Mr. Anderson drew up 3 examples. I've just got a couple of them here. Example number 1, laws treated politically motivated publication of material thought to endanger life or a serious risk to health or safety of the public as a terrorist act if done for the purpose of influencing government. And his findings, this could mean political journalists and bloggers who publish or even prepare to publish material that authorities deem a danger to life or public safety, they can be branded as a terrorist. So we could become terrorists if we're asking people to publicly go and peacefully go and join a demonstration. We could be classed as inciting terrorism, according to this.
Louise,
I know.
What a shocking state of affairs.
And with regards to hate crimes, Mr. Anderson gave an example of a school pupil who wrote on a blog that he was going to kill his teacher. And the findings agreed that this was a criminal act, but not terrorist activity. And Mr. Anderson also warned that it could also brand family members who support the person, support any person involved with making a protest or writing in a blog. They can also be labelled as a terrorist. So
this man says he's independent. He's a QC, and therefore he's totally controlled by the law system. So the last thing this man is independent. And I don't know what his experience is to make any form of judgment on terrorism.
No, I mean, but he has come out and said it's going a bit too much, our terrorism laws in this country. So all we can do is wait until later on today and see what his report's going to reveal when he gets it up online. So we have to wait. If anyone wants to have a look later, this is the website, just Independent Reviewer of Terrorism Legislation. They will find all the info from in there.
Okay. Well, our prediction is the state is getting incredibly frightened. The cracks are appearing as the criminal activity comes to the surface. And so we are going to see more and more attempts by Westminster to introduce legislation to keep us quiet, all the Devon terrorists. Oh my goodness. Well, what have Devon and Cornwall Police been up to? I've always wanted one of these, which is a decent picture of where policing effort goes. So never mind treason and child abuse. This is the priority for Devon and Cornwall Police, which is let's get out there and catch a few speeding motorists. And why are they so keen on this? Well, of course, it brings in money. And as we're seeing more and more, Britain's police are not public servants. What we're dealing with are corporations profit making on the backs of supposedly policing people.
Where is this money going to be going?
Yeah. Presumably that is a speed camera. I did wonder whether he'd actually got a little television tucked away in that box.
I think it's a speed camera.
He's watching CBeebies or something similar. Right, well, we are not going to finish without mentioning Robert Greene. We think it's 61 days now. Stuck under house arrest in Warrington, not for abusing children, but the exact opposite, for trying to protect youngsters from abuse. So if you're already living in the Alex Salmond dictatorship in Scotland, this is what you can expect in the future. Try and protect your children from abuse. Expect to be banged up. And a few pictures here, which you took, Louise. Well done.
I don't know how the broadcast came out when I was trying to do a live stream with you guys on Friday, but it was rather chaotic and I only had my mobile, so the filming wasn't great.
We were happy. We've got the live report, so it was good to have it.
So this is the picture of where they closed down the main road, and I must say there was an incredible woman who's standing. If you look over the far corner, there's some gates there with this main entrance. And there was a lady stood there for approximately about 6 hours holding a banner up saying, "Welcome to the houses of paedophiles." And she didn't say a word to anybody. She just stood there religiously, didn't leave her spot and just stood there. Silently, didn't say a word. This is where everybody closed down the road here. And
we've also got this, which is a very nice picture.
This is just the lovely Brenda Mumsy McNamara, who organised the event, and our one and only Bill Maloney. This was after it had all happened.
Right, so did any MPs come and talk to people?
Well, I actually got screamed at. He without a doubt, he worked in the building. I don't know who he was when I tried to hand him a leaflet, and he was very, very rude to me. Lots of obscenity on how dare I. When I went to hand him a leaflet, I said, "You're not interested in the abuse of children being carried out by people in that building." And with that, he spun round, totally gave me the biggest mouthful ever, then wandered off. And my question to him, did he have something to hide? But the other amazing thing was there wasn't one single journalist came over to see what was going on. There were hundreds of people there closing down the roads, marching back and forwards across the roads, and not one media people came over. Wow. There was a euthanasia demonstration for and against down the road. London Live were there, and I asked them could they come up, take photos, just make some interest. They assured me they would, but on the train coming home in the evening, I went on to London Live. A lot of information about the euthanasia protest, not one about United Against Child Abuse.
So, as we should really know, the mainstream media are heavily implicated in the child abuse. That was what the Operation All report was all about, apparently. They don't want to report it. BBC doesn't want to report it because the people carrying out the abuse and controlling the paedophile rings are at the top of the establishment and the political establishment.
Can I just make one step? There is another big child abuse rally going on this weekend called Children Screaming to be Heard. I think they're doing a blockade. I will have some more details on that for everybody tomorrow. Again, I think it is in the London area. There are many speakers going to be at an event as well. I think it's over 2 days. But I will come back with some more information on that for everybody tomorrow if anyone is around the London area and would like to attend.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Do get out there, pump out those emails, tweets, Twitters, conversation in the supermarkets, letters, and any other protests you can make in order to bring pressure to bear on this government in a cuddly, non-terrorist-like way. Okay.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.